things that need to be done, you know, first off, the HVAC unit on the east side of the building doesn't work at all, so there's no heat or air conditioning in that side of the building. And the plumbing doesn't work in that side of the building. Plus, there's lots of miscellaneous plumbing things that need to be resolved. We have no idea really how much that's gonna cost. Repairs to the roof and the siding, some electrical panels, the entry doors, and I know there's quite a few other little things. So Mike did kind of a conservative estimate. He felt that it was gonna come in somewhere around $8,200 to do some of that work. I think that's pretty conservative from what I've seen. I think it's gonna cost quite a bit more than that, to be honest with you. So let's say it does cost, you know, $10,000–12,000 to fix this building. I guess the question really is it in the best interest of the county to invest that money into the building?
I don't think there was ever a discussion that the county would be fixing that building.
Well,
In fact, my desire has been to sell it and not be in the lease
right.
business at all. I don't think it's serving the citizens. But no, there was never a discussion that we were gonna do anything
Right.
to repair that building. That was, in fact, it was in the lease agreement, that's up to the leasee. And I think that's really an important point.
Right.
We're not repairing that building, the taxpayers are not repairing that building. Its disrepair is not the fault of the taxpayers or the county.
But the argument's gonna be that it's the county's building. So
Again,
that's where we're
I
gonna
wanna
run
sell
into that resistance. You know, so
And-
it's the county's building, and of course, I don't know if everybody knows how this all came about, and we received that building in that shape, which is unfortunate. So now the
Right.
burden is on us to either repair it or get rid of it, or whatever the decision is of the commission to do.
And according to the person I talked to on leases, you can lease as is. So the leasee, you could have a rent to own, you could have, I mean, there's lots of different options. That was one of the things that we talked about in that first draft of the lease agreement, is as is. Again, county's not repairing it, but the business owner who has that building, this works with a lot of commercial buildings, repairs that building to a state where it is safe for the public, at the very least.
So I guess my thought is, you know, thinking that when we were talking about, you know, the liability that the county has, if something was to happen there, is that gonna be a course of action that somebody would have to get back to the county? We didn't, it is our building, we didn't maintain it.
I don't think you
Yeah,
can make that argument,
What do
but
you
I
think,
am
Corey?
worried about the liability, and that's why I'm asking for
Is there
some
a
kind
way
of a protection for
That could
the
happen?
public.
So the last time we met and you gave me instructions on what the proposal would be, it was that we would pay for, the county would pay for the major repairs. And
That's what I
that was in the letter I sent to him
Hmm.
at the end of February. So if that's what we're contemplating, then I think obviously that's all part of this mix, but
And I think there was maybe a misunderstanding that that would be ongoing repairs or upcoming repairs, not, and at least this was my understanding with our negotiations, never that we would bring the county up to a particular standard. And I think our verbal conversations covered that.
well, that was.
Maybe that was a different understanding of others. That was my understanding, that was never going to be the county taxpayers bringing that building up, because our discussion has been from day one to sell it in the very near future.
Well, that's not been our recent discussion, so.
It has.
Okay, well, I sent you this letter to review before I sent it, and it said specifically that the county would do major repairs. I thought that's what we were proceeding on at this point.
And I guess that's where my misunderstanding is. It was never, in my mind, major repairs to bring it up to a standard. And I don't think that's in your letter, because I think it would have argued against that. But if there were a repair needed to the roof in the future, during the term of the lease, the next year, then that would be a major repair that the county would cover. I think the two are vastly different, and maybe we need some more discussion to come to a common understanding, because this is all new to me, and not at all my understanding. Again, because our intent has been to sell the building, at least from early conversations. It's not something we need.
Well, and I guess along with that, so given the state of repair that the building's in, you know, the lease that we're asking for, I think that's way too high.
I agree, but I'm not sure how that works. When you have a unbiased analysis and you're doing a lease agreement like that, I mean, we compared to the oldest building in Townsend. It's been under good repair, it's Val's, upstairs. They've kept it in good repair, they've stayed on top of those things. Yeah, I don't know how that works, but
So let
it
me put it to you
doesn't,
this way, would it be in our best interest if we gave them a little bit lower lease and they were required to make some of these repairs? If they wanted to stay in the building for whatever time we determined to do this, you
I
see what I'm
guess,
saying?
yeah, and I think it's not a bad idea, depending on what the numbers end up being, because again, number one is the taxpayers.
Right.
But does it serve them to have the county subsidize the repair of that building when our intent is to sell it?
I'm just trying to find a compromise that's gonna work for everybody, and that's fair and
I
equitable.
agree. I guess one of the things I'm wondering is what if we did a much lower rent for a much shorter span of time? Say a 50% reduction in rent to 600-ish per month, but that's also for a 6-month lease, which gives us the time to have that protection for the citizens and the liability, but also it gives Dwight and Doc 6 months to determine, okay, what do you guys want to do? What are your options? Because that's not something we can determine for them. But it also doesn't tell them, you have to put money into this building that you may or may not want and that we don't want.
I think if we do that, if we give them 6 months or whatever it happens to be, that it needs to be under the understanding that that's the transition period. They need to be thinking in that time frame of someplace else that they would want to go. You know, I think in all fairness to them, if that's the expectation, they need to know that up front.
I agree. That's a substantial reduction and with no strings attached, which I kinda like. I don't know that I feel comfortable telling a business how they have to spend their money.
What's your thoughts there, Mike?
Well, I don't know, you know, if you're gonna get, you know, as you're saying here, you're gonna give them a 6-month lease for half the price. So I would say that if you gave them a 6-month lease for half the price, and they want this lease to be a year, or 2 years, whatever we agree to there, that in that 6 months that they have to do those repairs. Those repairs are repairs that neither Doc nor the hospital did in the 10 years before we got the building.
Right.
So that's, to me, that's Doc's responsibility or whoever, so it's not our responsibility. It's not worth us putting a bunch of money into that building.
Exactly.
So I think if you're gonna do a 1 or 2 year lease, then you give them 6 months of that lease is at half the price and they have to do the improvements.
And then the building would be in good repair for the full lease price for the other 18 months.
For the
I'm
other
thinking.
18 months. And then at that time, it's gone. They can buy it and move it, or we can sell it, or what. Do we have to sell that at,
That's it. It would be,
I think you
we'd
have
get a
to,
value on it.
I think you have to do it at the sheriff's sale.
It would have to be a public auction,
Yeah.
according to what I read in the MCA.
Yeah,
That's where it would have to go. And then,
and we have to get an appraisal and then we can't sell it below 70% of that appraised value. In 3 appraisals, whatever the average is, we can't sell it below 70% unless it goes to a nonprofit.
so what if you don't get 70% of the value?
You're stuck with
yeah,
So the only way
I
to
think you'd have to
make
get
that,
another appraisal maybe, I don't know.
yeah.
like with ours, the sheriff's sales that I do, it's usually the banks is the first one to throw a bid out there. And that's usually that threshold that they wanna meet. And that's wherever that is. And then if it goes up from there, it goes up from there. So if it's, somebody says bids up by 50 cents, then, and that's all you get, that's all you get. But, as far as I know, I think that has to be done that way. And the only way to confirm that you're gonna get this any percent is that the county would have to say, yeah, we're gonna do this. Or somebody is gonna say, I'm gonna pay this much. The downfall to that is if in this particular stance, if that thing went in and appraised for $40,000 with an expectation of having to move it, you know, you're gonna spend another 8 to 10 probably to move the damn thing. And I think that's where you're gonna have some resistance. If somebody's gonna buy it, it's obviously not a home, and that's what doesn't, there's not, I think that's where the hard part of trying to sell it for anything is gonna be, is that it's an office. And if it's an ill repair, you're probably not gonna get much, because no one's, or, you know, dying to build an office, or, you know, move an office that's old. You know, it's a triple wide. So I think you know, it's gonna be very difficult, but I'd be curious to see what actually appraised for under the conditions if you had an inspection. You know, if you did an inspection and said these are all the issues, and then have it appraised based on that, I'd be curious to see what it actually, what the value of the thing was. Because it's obviously old and dilapidated. So, but I do believe that it would have to go through a sheriff's sale to be done, so. Unless it went to a different, like the state, I don't know if it's, you know, if we could do it, you can't like move it up to the state auction and have it sold up there, but that's just my understanding, so. I could be completely wrong too. That's happened.
Do you have something else?
What year was this mobile home assembly manufactured?
It was in the early 80s, and the hospital spent $300,000 for it. I don't remember what the exact number was, do you?
I think that it was right at $300,000 for the whole project.
For the trailer, I mean, for that office assembly?
For the office and the electrical, I think the entire bid from Blaisdell Construction was $300,000. That included the electrical and sewer and everything.
Wow, somebody got a lot of money.
Well, it
Did
was
we finance that, the taxpayer?
classified as a medical bill.
Wow.
Well, I
Right.
think your compromise, Mike, is more than fair. I'd be good with that if you are, Daryl.
Mhm.
Ask a question. So if you go out and you buy a house, a used house, is the present owner responsible for repairs? Or are you, as the new owner, responsible for repairs? I think we're looking at this kind of backwards. I don't know that the county isn't responsible. It's your building. And so aren't you responsible for repairing it because you're the new owner? Every house I bought, the previous owner didn't fix it for me to move in. Am I looking at that wrong?
Well, I can say all the leases that I've been involved in, business leases, that's exactly how it worked. Whoever owned the building was responsible for those repairs. And the theory was the rent that you paid helped to upkeep the building. The situation we're in here, though, is the building in Wisconsin, in its present state, is really not worth that much. So, is it worth the investment from as you as a taxpayer, for us to spend your money to try to recondition this building, and then if we do, what do we have? And what would its value be if we were to sell it at a later date? So that's the question, in my mind. Looking out for you guys. Or do we just cut our loss now and move on?
But how long
And
has
the sad thing is that it affects Dr. Campbell and Dwight
and all their patients?
and all their patients, due to probably things that were out of their control. So how do we balance that out?
So how long has ownership been in limbo? Nobody see-
Ownership hasn't been in limbo, the lease agreement has been in limbo,
But didn't you just get a deed not very long ago for that?
like a year ago,
That was
So,
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
so where was it before that?
Well, that's the issue. It probably should have been taken care of 3 years ago, but it
I
wasn't.
agree, but I
So-
mean, why do we just lump all that together? Why isn't some of the history coming forth in the discussion?
I mean, is it really relevant at this point? The point is,
Why isn't?
it's our building, if it's our building, are we gonna spend the money to fix it or not? And how do we balance that out between the needs of Dr. Campbell and Dwight and their patients? It's a little bit of a dilemma that we didn't ask for as a commission.
They didn't ask for it either.
They just from what I understand, they gave us the title or whatever to the building and said, here you go. And all that history that happened with the hospital and Dr. Campbell, all that stuff,
It's a moot point.
that's in the past.
That's a moot point. at
It's
this
in the
point.
past.
I agree.
Okay?
Yep.
What we're trying to do is solve the problem today.
You've had it for 3 years?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years. Right? I mean,
And the whole issue with the building is even if we didn't take it from the hospital, it's still sitting on our ground
yeah.
that we're receiving nothing for.
Well, if you're gonna receive anything out of it, I think you'd have to fix it up to receive.
To that
That's like
question, I think,
We're gonna buy a
maybe
pickup
we
and
need
it's all
an
banged up, they
attorney
gotta
who
fix it
knows
up
about
before they can
leases
sell it.
that can give us some answers to our questions. Maybe you could work with somebody who's an expert in that field, and we could pose what our questions are. Is it in law that we have to do this, or is it up to the lease agreement? I don't know, but I'd sure like to know.
I guess my question is, did Doc Campbell in the hospital ever have a lease?
They don't have anything in writing. At some point long ago in the past, there was a dispute between Doc Campbell and the hospital. The settlement was, which appears to not have been, at least if it was in writing, it's never been lodged anywhere where I could get it. The agreement was that so long as Doc Campbell provided services at the hospital, saw patients, had privileges, that he used their building rent-free. And that was the agreement. Somewhere, well, not somewhere along the way, 2 years ago, the hospital then handed over ownership to the county, apparently without notice to him. And so now, somewhere around that same time frame, they revoked his privileges at the hospital. That's where we are. And so his proposal way back when was he's getting paid $5,000 a year to be the county health officer. He said, I'll just forego that payment and continue to rent the property. We've haggled back and forth, never reached a deal yet, and so that's where we are. At the time, one of the things we've talked about several options. One of them was he leases it for 3 years, then he takes ownership of it, and he's responsible for moving it out. It potentially ran afoul of the way that the county has to dispose of property, so we're just gonna go for a straight lease. So they want a 2-year lease at the rate of foregoing the $5,000 a year for a county health officer, which is probably low anyway. Hasn't been updated since 2010. We're at a point of saying we're in the realm of, what are we in? $1,200, $1,400 a month? What are we?
$12.50 is what we propose.
$1,250 a month for a year. They'd like to be at 2 years. And so if we're gonna ask for $1,250 a month, we gotta fix the building up. If we basically form an agreement that says, you guys are responsible for these repairs, we're responsible for these repairs, here's the rate, then we could probably get it done.
So just my sense in talking with Dwight, that I just don't think that Dr. Campbell is interested in investing in that building.
Right.
He's looking at retirement, his focus is someplace else. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah. The question is then, you've got this practice that if he retires, does it go away? Does another doctor come in? We all know the landscape of the hospital may change over during this year. And so the reality is that it could be a year from now, Dwight and all those patients go to join the new, whatever the new arrangement is. It might happen that way, we can't say for sure. So it could be that, I mean, at this point, they're asking for 2 years, and then he's not asking for an extension. At least Doc Campbell's not. Dwight wants to stay here long-term, he's not ready to retire, he's invested in his community, he's got a lot of patients, so that's where we are. The ongoing practice is more valuable than the building, that's for sure. So whether it stays there under a fixed building or they move somewhere else, that's the issue. So, but I think if someone's been there for 30 years, you know, they can't move in 6 months. They're gonna need a little better planning horizon than that. So. So I'll contact his attorney and we'll try to set up a meeting, Commissioner Folkward, and probably can hammer this stuff out, or at least a pretty good idea of it, be my guess.
I guess, you know, I put myself in Dr. Campbell's position. I mean, if we required him to make repairs to the building and then we were gonna say you're gone in a year, why would I do that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no.
Why would I do that?
It doesn't benefit the business.
No.
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 Yeah, I know, it's tough.
Okay. Well,
6 months is a viable amount of time to move. But that isn't our call either, that's the business call.
I guess,
How are we honoring the taxpayers
Yeah,
becomes
right.
really our focus. As far as the business, it can't be our focus. It's not our business, and we don't, as government, we shouldn't have a say in it.
Sure. I guess we'll have that meeting. We'll see what everybody's thoughts are. We'll go from there. And,
Sounds good.
you
If,
know,
if there is a debate about the lease, I would like to engage an attorney who's an expert on leases.
okay.
Is there a clause in law that says you have to bring a building to a particular standard? Or is there a clause in law that says you can define your relationship in the lease? That's what I've been told, but it wasn't by an attorney. So I think for all of us to be on the same page,
I
that
would
would be
think that you
important.
probably could do that, all right. I mean, that could be a mutual agreement amongst yourself, as long as it's in writing, it's fine. But I look at Dr. Campbell's position is why would he invest in the building he's gonna not be able to be in a year or whatever. I mean, but that's up to him.
Right.
We'll have that discussion.
But it seems to me that that's also our point. Why should we invest in a building we wanna get rid of
That's
to begin
exactly,
with?
that's exactly right. And why would we invest as well?
Why would we, I mean, you know, even if Mike says it's gonna cost us $8,200,
Mhm.
you know, we're not gonna recover that
We
money.
won't recover it.
Even if we have an 18-month lease, we're barely gonna recover.
And I think we both know that $8,200 is probably a pretty conservative estimate
Yeah,
to do
I
those
would say
repairs
so.
over there. I really do.
Yeah, that's probably in-house.
And that's in-house, so if we had to have some outside contracting done, I think that cost would be quite a bit more.
Now,
So, can I assume from the previous hearings that I've heard discussion, you're basically in 2 years, there's like a really strong chance that that unit, triple wide, it's out of there anyways, right? They're gonna move out in 2 years, you wanna get rid of it within 2 years. So, since the one doctor who has established patients may not wanna move, so in your mind's eye, an opportunity to actually lease that for long term? Or do you want that building out of there?
No, we want, that building needs to go, because nobody's gonna put enough money into it. Nobody in their right mind is gonna put enough money into it to be usable for what they're using.
Okay, so I guess then if the one doctor it doesn't wanna retire. Because actually, you could take that triple wide out of there and put another triple wide in there, 8 days, 7 days. Boom, 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 boom.
Right.
They come in, and they're easy to move. You know, it may be kind of dilapidated going down, you know, the road or whatever, but, so if the doctor wants to make that investment, he's gonna be there another 15 years, let's say. So, because there really is not much options for doctors in Townsend anymore. They kind of all faded away. And so, I guess it would be depending on what that other doctor wants to do, if he wants to stay, or, that's why I was saying, that's why I was curious. Is there an option that, in your mind, to lease that for long term, for that spot?
Not in my mind.
So,
You
So
wanna
then
get
maybe-
all the doctors in, huh?
but Dwight's a PA, so he has to work with an MD.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's part of the issue.
Right.
oh, well then, yeah, you,
Do you ever wanna do anything different with that area? Other than remove the current building? Is it just gonna be a park, or is it gonna be what is it gonna
Remove the
be?
building, because the building's not worth being there.
Oh, but do you have plans to replace it with something else?
No.
I guess we don't, we
Not
never
that I
talked
know.
about that at this point, but,
Okay,
yeah, we don't know.
government always expands, so, I mean, you know.
would there be if you're looking at opportunity, would there be a possibility to put a doctor's office over there? You're taking that off the tax roll too if you purchase it.
I don't,
It's not on the tax roll now. so-
Opportunity Bank isn't?
Oh, no, I thought you were talking about the triple wide next
No,
door.
I'm talking about opportunity that you have either thought about or submitted a bid to buy. So if you get it bought, that goes off the tax roll too.
Mhm.
So is there an opportunity for perhaps a doctor's office there?
No. In the Opportunity Building, no.
I'm just curious.
It's more in the MCA than anything else. Because it's a for-profit business, government cannot subsidize or provide special treatment. So that's what we're looking at. If it were a nonprofit, we'd be having a whole different conversation. And it's just the law. It's from the legislature, and that would be the place to change it, not here. We can't do anything about it but follow it.
all right. But we'll see where discussion leads us when we do that.
Sounds good.
Tim
Thank you,
has a
Corey.
question.
And if you keep us all in the loop,
Yeah.
that would
Oh,
be good.
yeah,
I will.
we'll all be in, we'll all be in the loop.
Perfect.
Mike, got this question?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just a real quick question before Mr. Swanson leaves. Verbally, the clinic and Dr. Campbell have been part of the hospital regardless of whether it's a nonprofit and he's profit or not. It's been an integral part. And the question I have for clarification is, does the hospital district, which is an elected body with taxpayer funding involved in a lot of different things with collateral, does that clinic have anything, because it is county-owned now, does that have any, I guess, is it listed as collateral in part of the county process that's ongoing on that side, or is it completely still held separate from that? And is there something there that the county hospital district legally has a seat at the table?
No, there.
I don't believe so, because because that building was THS's property, not the district's property.
So,
Yeah, it was never part of the district.
anyway, it went from the nonprofit, which was part of our program with the district, and so at
I'm
one
not
time-
even sure how THS acquired it. If it was before, if the district had it and then THS bought it, or, I have no idea how that relationship.
I don't either, that's why I asked the question, so I just kind of for clarification, thank you. Don't know. Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for our agenda. Is there anything else?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, instead of coming back at 1:30, sorry. We're gonna postpone that because Mike Myers is out of town and several of our staff that would be involved are out of town. This came from you, Daryl, and I was wondering if, how you guys felt about maybe putting together a 360 evaluation. We haven't done evaluations of our staff in a very long time, and I love the fact that you brought it up and that we can do it again. So what I would like to do, if it's good with you guys, is start in April scheduling evaluations with, it would be just the department heads, but then also do a 360, which puts the questions to them, kind of some of the same ones we'd be asking on us. What is it the commission is doing right? What would you like to see us do differently? What would you like to see us do that we're not doing? That kind of thing. How do you guys feel about that? We could do it, the responses are always anonymous, and I think there's a way that we could maintain that anonymity for our folks pretty easily and get some good feedback.
Well,
You
I
guys
think
good
it's-
with that?
Yeah, it's important, we need to have that feedback,
Okay,
as long as they're kind.
right? Yeah, we'll put that as a requirement at the top. And I was thinking instead of, one of the things that has always been a caution is, this is a great employee, check, and that's your whole evaluation. Well,
Right.
if we could have questions that are open-ended, so we could actually get some depth with those staffers, I think that would be really beneficial for us, especially entering budget season.
Yeah, what's important about that is they view things maybe a little bit differently than we do. And it's
Yeah.
important to have that perspective, so.
All right, another question I have for you, off the topic, 911 legislation, the email that came from Chantil. You guys good with Broadwater County Commission being in support of protecting those funds for
Yes.
counties?
Yeah,
All right, cool. I'll draft a letter so that Chantil has us in her bunch. And if you guys have any edits, feel free to share those, I'll share them with you. And then the last thing is there is a study bill, we're waiting to see if it'll be addressed. It's HJ 31, is Wynn still here? I imagine you have something to do with this. It's Representative Mercer's study bill on the Board of Crime Control. And so what I'm wondering is, are you guys interested in being a joint commission on that too? It's not it's just our position as a board, and maybe sheriff, would be, yes, we are interested in a study on. Last session, at the 11th hour, the Board of Crime Control was taken from an autonomous, administratively attached board under Department of Justice to a bureau within Department of Corrections. What it did, and the stress and worry is that it's put in jeopardy about $18 million that the board is able to bring into the state of Montana for local law enforcement, specifically in local governments, for crime control. And so Representative Mercer, who used to be a U.S. attorney, so he has some engagement with Board of Crime Control in these grants, has authored a study bill to see, is this the right place? Is it gonna put those funds in jeopardy? What are some of the things that have happened? And how can we protect NBCC? Are you guys good with supporting the study bill?
So it's
Supporting the
just
study?
a study, huh?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Were
See,
you
and I
behind
think,
this?
and I know from the sheriff's side of the house, we've had a lot of discussions regarding this transition from being administratively attached to the Department of Justice to being under the Board of Crime Control, or under the Board of DOC, and that's where it's been. And I know with conversations that I've engaged in, is that we felt that change, prior to the 17 legislation, DOC was really struggling financially because the fact is that they were expending so much money housing inmates in locals, in local jails. So at the time that bill was passed under Justice Reinvestment, and this is kind of a caveat to when they introduced Justice Reinvestment and all that, they also looped in the Board of Crime Control. And in the 17th session, they had everybody really strong-armed in every aspect. They didn't make any decisions on all the key players. When you talk about the sheriff's retirement bill was sitting there, and then you had the county attorney's funding sitting there, and you had, I think, some with Highway Patrol, and you had some stuff with DOJ. And so no one really could engage in anything that they could support or oppose because of a risk they were gonna lose whatever they were shooting for. And so 11th hour, the last day, all that stuff came approved, all kind of in a fell swoop, and no one had an option or an ability to interject or comment. And so that switch, since that's happened, it seems like more of the Board of Crime Control funding, grant funding that comes in, there's, I think, 16.8 million, right? That's come in, it seems like more of those grants is now focused at programs for Department of Corrections, less on law enforcement and proactive approaches sourcing. Is all to deal with treatment and providing services to offenders and all this other stuff. And so it's really, in our mind, and I know in my mind, it's not benefited public safety in any fashion. Sitting through meetings with Director Michaels and Deputy Director Wilkin, you know, they've created a lot of, in the last 2 years, they've created a lot of reporting systems. And so one of the things that they were really behind the 8 ball in is they had no records management systems and reporting systems in place. And it seems like ever since Board of Crime Control has fallen underneath DOC, these reporting systems are coming through the woodwork left and right. And so basically what I'm seeing is that, and there's been some discussions that if the sheriffs come in and oppose some things in regards to what DOC is doing with Board of Crime Control, that they're gonna take away things, they're gonna be, there's been a tug of war going on in a lot of aspects. My personal opinion is that the Board of Crime Control should have stayed underneath the Department of Justice, and that's where it should have been. Had no business coming off of that. And in the same breath of that, switching them over to DOC has also messed up how post works. And so previously, the Public Officer Standards and Training Council, if they decertify you, your next step was to go to the Board of Crime Control as an appeal process. Well, now they're under DOC as a bureau, not a quasi-judicial board, and people that post certify as people under DOC. So it created a mess, so then now they're trying to get it back under, or change the process over to DOJ, and now they just want to take post and make it a bureau within the Department of Justice, which still screws everything up because post certifies Department of Justice folks as well. So it's created a bigger nightmare than it is, and I would think that if Representative, is it Representative Mercer? Or
Yes.
is it,
Yeah.
I think if he wants to do a study, it's probably in the best interest of all attached to the justice system to have that done. Just to see if we can clear the path to put things back where they belonged and shouldn't have been messed with in the first place.
So is it gonna pretty much specifically deal with how these grants are administered and where they go to, is that part of this?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yep,
So-
there's like 12, have you read it?
I haven't.
There's like 12 very detailed questions.
Mhm.
How has staff worked, what is the staffing? And the staffing, of course, does the reporting on those grants. Where will the grants go, how's the money work, has there been any lost funding? So very detailed questions is the 12 they want addressed.
And like with the multi-jurisdictional drug task forces, that money was in limbo. That all comes, the majority of that funding mechanism is broke down. So there's like 894,000 that's allocated for multi-jurisdictional drug task forces around the state. However, when they switched, some of that is attached under Board of Crime Control and Department of Justice. So that prolonged that process out to where, like MRDPF, we had to find different funding sources because our grant money wasn't coming through in the fashion that it was supposed to be. And then there were some issues under some federal guidelines. I will say that when it was under the Department of Justice, the Board of Crime Control did a lot of grants for a plethora of things in regards to law enforcement. And now, if you go in and look under the board, and Brandon can attest to this, a lot of this is victim services. It's a lot of treatment, not only mental health, but also the substance abuse treatment programs and blah, blah, blah. It really has gotten shifted farther away from the public safety component where it used to be. And so it's made law enforcement agencies really struggle trying to find funding also to do this. And, I mean, it kind of goes in with that one bill that they created or set aside $400,000 to pay for rent for released sex offenders and violent offenders. So there's communities, it was Ravalli County, Missoula County, another county, and then the Lewis and Clark County Commissioners applied for it to bring in sex offenders, because no one wants sex offenders in their community. And so they were gonna get this grant to where they'd pay like the deposit in the first month's rent for sex offenders to come in and stay in the community. Well, when the sheriff found out and the chief found out of Helena that the powers to be submitted this grant to bring sex offenders in, they twisted off, and big argument ensued at the Oversight Council, and I was part of it. And so it's one of those things. I mean, there's lots of sex offenders in the world, but when you start talking about tier 2 and tier 3 sex offenders, they stand a higher chance of recidivism, and you do not. As a safety component, it's uncomfortable to have them there. So that's part of the issue. But yeah, they really took a lot of things and put it under justice reinvestment. And I mean, they took a lot of parts and pieces and kind of put it under one bill and said, here it is. But I think they're looking at two different components, and I think that was the thing, is how do we get money for DOC and how do we reduce the cost of DOC? And they kind of just piecemealed funding mechanisms and went that way. So,
Did they give a timeline on this study when they want to start?
It would be over the next 2 years.
Okay.
So I haven't seen it come through. I expect that we may get, and that's why I'm asking for your support today, we may just get 24 hours.
Sure.
We're hearing on this tomorrow. And then I have to have permission from the governor's office in order to testify for the Board of Crime Control. And the board did vote for that to happen. I don't know that I'll get that, so I would like to testify as, speaking on behalf of Broadwater County's commission as a unit, and share, some of the issues that we've had even locally with this transition, which is indicative of a bunch of counties across the state, some more, some less. But yeah, that's why I'm asking. I can get you a copy of the bill to review it, but really it is just a study into not how did it happen, but what are some of the things that have happened because of it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I have my support too.
okay, thank you.
Just real quick, Commissioner Albert, what was the bill number again?
HJ 31.
31, thank you.
Mike, are you good with that one too?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
and I
So I'll
did.
keep you guys updated. I'll send you a copy of the bills. And Lynn, if you want your name added, I would imagine you might be there testifying when that comes out.
Well, I just looked back and they didn't have anything in the last, I wasn't here for the last conference call on Friday, but they didn't have anything on there, so I'll reach out to Nanette today. And you said HG?
HJ
HJ?
31.
Okay,
I'll send it to you too.
okay, and just see what's going on there. It's hard to say what they're doing. I mean, this legislation session's been interesting, and it's like Laura said, some of these bills they're popping up, like, they're getting scheduled at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday and for hearing at 9 o'clock the next morning. And some of these things are smoking through, and it's so hard to get caught up to speed on what's transpiring, and I don't think that some of this stuff is getting relayed in a proper fashion. Yeah, I'm sure there's be interesting to see, so. Has it been introduced it has been introduced as a bill, it just hasn't had a hearing yet,
Right,
so.
yeah,
Who's House Chair and Judiciary?
I don't know. No idea.
And I was gonna ask about the state entitlement bill. I did, obviously I sent out a thing, but I haven't heard anything. I just went back through the email, I didn't really show anything transpiring with that state entitlement money, but.
I think that's up this Thursday. Or no, Tuesday and Thursday.
Is it?
Both.
Okay. I did read, you guys got a copy of the email that I sent to Senator Sales and Representative Dooley. Hopefully, that hopefully makes a difference. I don't know, Senator Sells is very hard to figure out, to say it the easiest way. I can't, I watch some of his voting and I don't understand what his thought process is, so, I'd be curious to see what happens with that, but, cause that was what,
It's
that was
in
under House Bill.
too.
House Bill 2,
Yeah.
so, be curious to see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, just the very premise of it, and some of the testimony for that was pretty hard hitting, but pretty much legislature, you haven't done your job on this. You have a lot of areas where you could be saving and you've opted not to. Turning around and penalizing counties for prosecuting crime and arresting crime, that's not the right way to fund this. It's just ridiculous.
Well, and what I don't understand, and DOC, I think, has overstepped their bounds quite a bit, because even when it came to the disorderly conduct bill and the increase to the shoplifting, and using emergency exits in shoplifting crime, they were hugely opposed to it, which made no sense, because they have no jurisdiction over misdemeanors in the first place. But they are a very loud voice at the table, saying that we cannot instill jail time on people that commit misdemeanor crimes. And so part of the disorderly conduct bill goes back to the incident we had with Andrew Gibbs back in 2000, I believe it was 17, during Oktoberfest. So we had him leave Oktoberfest because he was drunk and disorderly. Told him to go home. Then he went to the commercial, got a disturbance there. Told him to go home because they changed the law in 17 to where you can't arrest for disorderly conduct without a prior first conviction. Well, how do you get a conviction if you can never get him in there? Because if you don't arrest him, then there's no arrest number assigned by CJIN or the FBI, so you never know if he's ever been convicted of a crime because there's no data there. And so we ended up dealing with him 6 times before finally, I said enough's enough, hauls ass to jail. I don't care. The state could come after me, I don't care, but we're not gonna keep dealing with this guy. We've asked him to go home, he just refuses to go, and he's obviously got issues. He's the same one that shot at the Tina Mine building over in White Sulphur. Same guy that shot up the house over here on, I should say allegedly, over on Wargate Creek and Cemetery Road. So, somebody that you really didn't have the capabilities of dealing with. Cynthia Walkins, we argued for 2 hours at the Capitol, outside of the chambers, trying to negotiate a happy medium there. And I thought we had it in place, and then somebody else from DOC got involved, and it's been difficult. I'm like, you just don't have any purview over this. Why are you engaging in this? And it says these are misdemeanor crimes, and they just continue to go down this path of we're going to eliminate jail time and fines and everything else for people that commit crime. So in some breaths, I go, why do we have cops if we can't? I mean, it makes no sense. If there's no penalty for a crime, then why the hell are we here? If we can't lock you up and make the community safe, then why are we here? And I just don't understand. And they've got a very loud voice on Capitol Hill right now that is just insane. So they love it. So, and I know the governor's told us that some of the things that we've tried to discuss, he's like, leave it alone. Okay.
Got anything else?
Nope,
So there is no meeting next Monday.
correct.
So Wednesday at 1 is our next meeting.
Yeah,
Should we, so we prevent confusion like we had in the past, because this is on this week's agenda, somebody will say, well, I didn't know you were meeting next Wednesday. Should we post another agenda for Wednesday's meeting?
For 27?
It's on the agenda.
I know, it is here, but people will, I can see and tell you what's gonna happen. They're gonna look out there, they're gonna say, well, this is posted this week, right? They're not gonna see agenda for next week. and then they're gonna see us meet on Wednesday, and they're gonna say, well, when was that posted? We ran into this once already.
We did, and I hope that the newspaper, Tim, since you're here, kind of learned from that and would be upfront with the public and say, no, we did advertise that, it was
Okay.
sent to us. And I think from our part, just mentioning today, we can educate the public that, no, it was there, it's on the website, they can go back and check it.
All right?
I hear what you're saying, but I do think that the personal responsibility has to be a part of this.
Just wanted that to be made
Absolutely,
clear.
yeah, and it is clear, yeah.
Okay.
It's just a matter of looking at the details.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm assuming Bill's presentation is gonna take a while. I think it's,
I would hope that people attend this meeting.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
the general public, because this is important. Because it not only reflects just public safety side, it reflects the whole county.
Yep.
That's what's important about this, and I hope that people understand that.
he's got some pretty good data right there, in what he presented 2 weeks ago. And I'm curious to see what the rest of it look like, but, yeah, I'm assuming that it's gonna be probably a pretty solid 2 hours, I would take a guess.
Okay.
You know, especially with questions and answers and things of that nature. It does bring a very broad perspective to, definitely outside the box thinking, I would say that. I mean, he's looked at every component from A to Z, and I think he's really done due diligence to find the best answers to all the questions. And so, I'm hoping that's gonna be a good product, so, I'm hoping, so. But it seems to be, unfortunately, it's not the information necessarily you wanna hear, and that's the hard part. It's not the most audible, pleasing, information, but it's well-rounded, I think, and that's the important part. I think it's an approach that hasn't been dealt with or looked at, in the previous times, so, we'll see how it goes.
Okay. I have nothing else.
Okay. So we will adjourn at whatever that time is, 11:53.
you guys see this table, by the way?
I see it starting to delaminate over there.
Well, it's actually cracked.
Is it?
It's cracked right
Oh,
into
right
the
there.
wood here, and my drawer will hardly open. I think somebody put some weight on this end, and there's a good separating.
It probably needs to get replanted.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is it cracked over
there? Hey, Tim, I got a question for you.
right
Are
here.
are you guys planning to,
Right here's cracked, and these are cracked.
are you guys kind of planning to promote this little meeting a little bit here?
Yes, if we can sit in and listen into it,
Yeah,
so we can
I'm
see.
just like, are you planning to do anything in the paper saying, asking people to show up?
We
The
can sure-
importance of it, I mean, because it is important.
Well, we can go online and do that
Okay.
because of the, I guess.
I mean, I'm just asking.
I didn't, personally, I missed that part in the agenda as far as being needing to be, something that we could focus on
Sure.
and single out.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
I got, that's, that.
we can get online and maybe try to get a plug into folks to say, hey, if you wanna know what's going on, there's a working meeting and you can learn some more now. Again, I've also been, on the board there where you can say, well, if you get too much people involved in a working meeting, it's hard to get stuff done too, so.
Well, I
there's that concern
agree with
that
that.
surfaces.
I just,
No, just
I
the
just hope that
advisory.
people understand that it's important.
So Board of Health,
Oh, I
that's a
agree.
governing board.
I do agree.
But whatever, it will ultimately be up to them, all we need to do is inform
Well, you
them
can
what is
take
gonna
this
happen,
and then
right?
just write in
Exactly.
search and rescue
Exactly.
board.
I agree 100%.
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Quick question, why is there no meeting next week?
We're at Mackers, we're at Mackers Conference in Great Falls,
What's the matter?
Montana